All right, y'all, it's been a couple of minutes and we're gonna, continue to see folks come on, but it is really nice to have y'all attending today to talk about how to legalize marijuana right. We know that this is a hot button issue in Virginia politics, and we wanna make sure that the focus of any conversation is on the hundreds of Black and Brown Virginians who are suffering lifelong consequences on the war on drugs. Gaining access to stable employment, housing, or bouncing in and out of the criminal legal system because marijuana laws have been used as a weapon against Black and Brown folks for decades. And today we've got some phenomenal speakers nationally and locally to talk about the issues at hand and what we must and what we want lawmakers and policy decision makers to see and do as marijuana reform and legalization works its way through the General Assembly this year. And so again, I am just so thankful that you all are here and that our wonderful panelists are here too. I will say that it's way past time that Virginia legalized marijuana. And again, we need to make sure that we center it around racial justice and center it around equity and make sure that we move forward in a way that's really true to what we know the consequences have been in the years past. And with that, my name is Ashna Khanna, and I'm the Legislative Director here at the ACLU of Virginia. I'll be one of your moderators tonight, and it is such a privilege to also introduce Chelsea Higgs-Wise, who is going to be my co-moderator tonight. She was someone phenomenal who has been an inspirational advocate. She's the executive director of Marijuana Justice and has been essential to ensuring that community voices are heard and that the community is involved every step of the way. And with that, I'll kick it off to you, Chelsea.
Thank you so much, Ashna. Thank you so much to the ACLU Virginia. Thank you to ACLU National for their work as well with this particular space. Again, my name is Chelsea Higgs-Wise, she, her, and I'm the co-founder of Marijuana Justice. I'm also just really excited to be here in this particular space because Marijuana Justice was founded just 2 years ago in 2019, but as a racial justice advocate, I've been in the space for quite a while and really understood what was happening with cannabis across the country as they were looking at the laws. In particular tonight, I'm even more thrilled because part of our work in coming together formally for Marijuana Justice in Virginia was inspired by the Drug Policy Alliance. A few years ago, I attended a conference and was able to really hear their perspective on this particular law within justice and centering justice, and then to watch what they've been able to do in the hard fight that they've put up in the last couple of years in New York to really make sure it's done right. So I'm really excited to say that now there is space right here in Virginia, and we've partnered with the ACLU to really come together to work on this within the past year or so. And what we found across the Commonwealth and across the last few decades is that Virginia has actually just gotten worse with how we have criminalized and enforced marijuana. From 2010 specifically to 2019, Virginia made 20,000 to 30,000 arrests each year. About 90% of them have been for possession in small amounts. So even the data shows that the use of marijuana in Black and Brown Virginians are about the same. We know that Black Virginians were 3.4 times the rate to get arrested and 3.9 times the rate to be convicted. And so right now we have to understand that we have decriminalized marijuana, and I'm going to put that in quotes because it is still illegal. You will still have a run-in with the cops. And we know for our folks that can be deadly. We know that is still putting us in the way, and that sometimes we have even more charges on us just because now this introduction has come with law enforcement. So it's been really important to us throughout our fight with DCRIM, with ACLU and Rise for Youth specifically, because again, this is about the justice of our people and also the restitution to make sure that we get our pay, but with a reparations model to make sure it does not happen again, and to make sure we have a long time investment. So I'm really excited to be here. Marijuana Justice, again, we are focused on repealing the prohibition and refunding Black futures. And I'm so excited to kick it right on back to Ashna so we can get started with some more speakers.
Awesome. So I know that many of you have seen in news articles or may have heard that the governor released his 400-page proposal yesterday. And so I just wanted to take a minute to say that we are working hard to go through all 400 pages in the last 24 hours. The second that we received it, we have been doing nothing but going through it. You know what? The devil is in the details. And we know that, you know, there are a lot of components that we'd like to see that weren't accepted. You know, the governor's proposal, I would say, just as a lip service when it comes to addressing the reality and really achieving racial equity. It would still perpetuate a lot of racial inequity and exists that in law enforcement currently. And so, you know, I want to say that, you know, we strongly believe and our values are that we should not be creating new crimes as we move forward towards legalization. We want to make sure that the folks that have been most harmed by the war on drugs have full and equitable access to the new legal markets. We want to make sure that the repair that needs to be done and to rebuild communities that have been targeted by marijuana law enforcement really does happen by reinvesting tax revenue directly into Black and Brown communities. And we're looking at how they're choosing the boards, who's going to be choosing, you know, who are the decision makers. And in the meantime, while we figure it out, the number one thing that we believe that needs to happen is we need to stop the harm. We need the prohibition on marijuana to be completely repealed until the new legal system comes in place. And so, you know, we will continue to discuss kind of some of these values and components. But I did want to, you know, one of our biggest things that we really wanted was we didn't want to criminalize another generation of Black and Brown youth due to new marijuana laws. And unfortunately, you know, that's where the bill is currently at. And we have experts here today. And, you know, I have the privilege of introducing Rise for Youth that are going to be talking about what are the impact that youth face and what exactly the current law, you know, kind of says and where we want it to go. And so with that, I have the privilege of introducing Valerie Slater, who is the executive director and leads Rise for Youth and advocates for rights for their youth, their families, their communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Previously, Valerie has worked as a juvenile justice attorney with the Legal Aid Justice Center and coordinated Rise efforts with the Just Children program of LAJC. She is someone who inspires me daily. And with her, I have Ayana, who is a 15-year-old freshman attending Verona High School. She is a boxer with East End Boxing Club, where she trains to hone her skills of self-discipline and control. Ayana is also a youth leader with Rise for Youth and is passionate about the advocacy work she is doing to advance youth justice across the Commonwealth of Virginia and nationally. And with that, I am going to, you know, hand it over to these two phenomenal women.
Thank you so much, Ashna. I am so excited to be joined here this evening by Ayana, one of our great youth leaders. And yeah, Rise for Youth, it stands for Reinvest in Supportive Environments. And we believe that every environment that touches a youth's life has got to be positive. It's got to be building. It's got to be inspiring. And it has to be making sure that young people are going to realize their dream, their passion, and then live it to the fullest. And so we also believe that all of the work that we do, we must do it alongside young people, not for them, and not trying to push them out in front when they may not be ready. But we walk alongside each other, learning from each other, growing with each other, and making the changes that they have realized need to be made, and that we are there to support them and making them happen. With that, Ayana, let's get into this conversation. So here we are, right? We're on the verge of legalizing marijuana in Virginia. And, you know, we've been looking at this closely and watching it. And we have, while we're saying that it's going to be legal for everyone, what the law as it stands now, the bill as it stands now, it continues to create new crimes for children in Virginia. And Ayana, you know, we suggested instead that they make it a child in need of services, because we understand that when a child is experimenting with any substance that they should not, we recognize that that's often a cry for help, or a child is medicating themselves from something that may be going wrong in their lives, and we should support them. So Ayana, how do you feel about what the law or what the bill currently says, and realizing that what it's done is created a new law for you and other young people?
I feel like the people who are doing this just want to make laws. They want to pass things before it's their time to get out of office. And I feel like them doing it carelessly is wrong because they're not thinking about the lives that they're affecting. They're only thinking about themselves. They think, oh, we're going to get these bad kids put in jail, when in reality, everybody who's going to get put in jail for this is not bad. These are kids who may need help and may be going through things.
Right. You're absolutely right, Ayana. And, you know, you raised a point. You said the kids who will be put in jail. And so, yeah, tell us who you think that will be.
I think that will be kids from neighborhoods who don't have a lot, kids who are going through things, kids from, and it could be good kids too. It could be good kids, and it could be, not to say bad kids, but kids who aren't necessarily the best in the law's eyes. Mm-hmm. Good people, but not good with the law. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's wrong that it's going to affect these kids that just need help and don't deserve to be put in jail for trying to help themselves, because for some of these kids, this is a way out of reality and a way to just get away from the real world for a minute or two. And I feel like it's very wrong to put them in jail because of that.
Right, right. And Ayana, so, you know, we were talking earlier and we were talking about your experiences in school and the experiences of your friends in school, and, you know, how you were anticipating this might affect some of your friends and some of the people in your school. So why don't you share a little bit about what we were talking about on that?
We were talking about, so at my middle school, there was this rule, like you can't have hoodies, you can't wear jackets with hoods at all. You couldn't have your phones. If you were caught with your phone, they would take it and your parent would have to come get it. And what I saw was, in the hallways, I saw kids that weren't Black and brown walking around with hoodies on and nobody saying anything to them. But one Black or brown child walks past and teachers take the hoodies, they don't give them back. They call parents, they get written up. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? Over a hoodie? I never thought it was that serious for somebody to get in trouble. Like, this is going on their record over a hoodie, a piece of clothing.
Yeah. So now let's just now replace a hoodie with marijuana. What are your thoughts?
I think it would be the same. I don't think it would change, and it's disappointing.
Yeah. So that's school, right? So what about in the community? What have been some of the things that you have seen that give you pause or just make you sad about potentially having new crimes created for children as it relates to marijuana? What are some of the things that you have seen children interacting with police officers or in just any situation?
So I used to go to this little like center after school, and there was a playground out back. It was in the middle of like a bunch of like houses and stuff and apartments. So a lot of kids from the neighborhood used to come down there. On one day, actually, I don't think I told you this, we were at the playground and it was like these kids just riding their bikes down the street, and this police officer just pulled over and started like talking to them, made them like lean on the car and everything. And I'm just like, they weren't even doing anything. Like, what's the reason? And as a child, I wouldn't be able to say anything, and I'm so glad. That's why I'm so glad that Rise for Youth is giving me the opportunity to speak and to be heard. Because if I were to say something in that situation, I would have likely gotten in trouble with them or gotten in trouble with the center.
You know, that's so troubling. You know, young people who are in trouble literally for just being Black kids in a community. You know, but you know, I'm really troubled by this idea that we have created a new crime for children. It's specifically for them. And these young kids, they hadn't done anything. So this would have been an opportunity for police officers to arrest these kids, and then they would be involved in the juvenile justice system for simple possession of marijuana, because it would now be a crime. So kids who had to lean against a car and, and just get a talking to, all of a sudden now, these are children who are being arrested, and so we cannot allow for the legislation as it is written now. It cannot go forward. We must fight this. And the examples that you have shared are clear examples of why. And I'm curious, do you have just one other example that you can share with us?
I do. I went on with the center I was with one day. We went on a trip to I forget what the building's called, but it's like
Capitol building.
Yes, the Capitol building, where they vote on the laws and stuff. And we were there, and we were all. It had been a long day. All the kids were so tired. We were all sitting there, and it was time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we were still sitting down. One of the state troopers came up to my friend and kind of pulled him up. And she was white, and he was black. It ended up getting on the news, and on the news, his mother is also like very good. She knows a lot of people who are like with the laws and senators and stuff. And so that ended up getting on the news, and one of the delegates ended up telling me, and I told her the story, that ended up getting all the state troopers retrained. But what else? Oh yes, my friend, he was African American. He was also gay. And when she told me that it ended up getting all the state troopers trained, I was like, that's great, but they shouldn't have to be retrained. This is basic human decency. You don't
That's
just
exactly right.
Yank them up, especially a kid.
That's exactly
And
right.
it is our right. We don't have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. There's nowhere in the laws that says that you have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I feel like that they try to make you do it. Even in schools, they try to make you do it. In my school, there was only one teacher who told me. She was like, I told her one day I was upset because the teacher told me that I had to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I was tired. It was early in the morning. I'm not feeling it. And she told me, she was like, oh yeah, they can't make you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm like, why is there only one teacher who has told me this, and all the other teachers are trying to make students stand and trying to write them up for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance when it's not necessary?
Right. It's an infringement on your First Amendment right. You have the right to free speech, and free speech can even mean I choose not to participate in whatever speech you are partaking in at any given moment. So you're absolutely right, Ayanna. You're absolutely right. And so as we compare this then to marijuana and the creation of new crimes, we have seen young people criminalized just for being Black and in the park. We have seen young kids, Black kids, harassed in hallways when whatever behavior they are taking in is okay if it's a white student. We have seen kids yanked up out of their seats for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And what all of these situations have in common is the way Black children are treated is different from the way white children are treated. So with all of these examples, do you believe that in any way, the way this law is written, it is not going to in some way further criminalize Black kids, brown kids?
I think it's going to further criminalize them. I know this. I don't think it. I know it. And I find it very weird how marijuana is a plant. It's not hurting anyone any worse than cigarettes are. And cigarettes have less of a Miss Valerie, you know the word, less of a
an impact.
Yes, like less of a punishment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a lower punishment. There you go. Yeah, right. And actually, when we think about alcohol, right? I have never seen the case of someone driving under the influence of marijuana and killing someone.
Me either.
But alcohol, and I'm not, and in no way am I condoning underage use of marijuana. But what I am saying is that when we look at the penalties, they are greater than they need to be. If we are looking to teach children and redirect children and give them other avenues for how to address and how to deal with pain, with struggle, with trauma, with all of the things that they may be experiencing, then perhaps we ought to be looking at a child in need of services and providing the necessary services rather than criminalizing and then allowing a child to get so further involved or completely involved in the criminal justice system. You know, that was something that we were talking about too, getting further involved with the criminal justice system. You know, tell me about what some of the things that you were thinking on that.
I was thinking this law, it's affecting people's lives, and I don't think they realize how bad it's going to affect these kids. Some of these kids could be getting second offenses. This could be their first offense, and they're on the way to the best college ever. This could really mess up someone's life. And for some of these kids could be, in the Black community, I see a lot of depression and anxiety. This could be these kids' way of getting away from that. Not saying it's the best way, but it's their way. And this plant could be keeping them from going over the edge. And I feel like it's very wrong that these people are trying to just all of a sudden just slap a law on this. Like it's hurting somebody when it's not.
Right. You know, Ayana, you make an excellent point when you said it could be their second offense. You know, there's a piece of legislation that is before the General Assembly this session it's a habitual offender piece of legislation for children. And so imagine, you know, when we start talking about habitual offender, we're basically saying, wait, you're someone that we just can't seem to get a handle on. And this is a child who potentially can go just even deeper into the system from, just like you said, just attempting to deal with and to handle and to manage some of the stressors or traumas that they're experiencing in their lives. And so once again, it just energizes the idea that we have got to begin supporting children and not criminalizing them, and especially in the Black and Brown community. So Ayana, I just want to give you an opportunity to, if you were going to say something to the governor right now, if you were going to talk to the legislators that are going to be hearing this during session right now, if you were before them and you were going to tell them something, what would you want to say to them?
I would say you are wrong. And I know sometimes adults don't like to hear it, but you're wrong. Imagine if this was your child or your grandchild. How would you feel if they were just getting locked up? And just put this in their head. How would they feel if their child is getting locked up for a law that they made? Their child is getting locked up for their third or fourth time because of a law that they made, and this time they're not getting out. How would they feel?
Yeah. Powerful words, Ayana. Go ahead, please. Don't let me interrupt.
I'm sure in their head, this child it's a mistake. They're not going to do it again, but that's in every parent's head. And sometimes it is true, and sometimes it's not. But I bet they'll run up there and they'll talk to the officer and they'll be like, he's a good kid. He won't do it again. She won't do it again. But the people are going to say, it's the law. And how are they going to feel about it when they know that they're one of the people who made that law, who put this law in place, and now they are the reason their child or grandchild is in prison?
Wow. Thank you for that, Ayana. And you know what? With that, there's nothing more I need to say. Ayana sealed that deal. You know, what would it feel like if it were your child and your child is the one locked up? If your child is the one with the record and their future is perhaps tarnished. So with that, I just want to thank you all again for allowing Ayana and I to have this conversation, to talk about the impact of marijuana on children, and especially Black and Brown children, when we know that there are such disparities. We have got to move forward in a way that is going to prove to be equitable for all. The best way to do that is to ensure we are not making a crime for children. You can't use something that is not a crime in a way that is going to all of a sudden create something disparate. No, you're going to have to apply it equally because you're just not able to criminalize children. And that's what we want to see. We will not have a third war on drugs waged on our children. Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and thank you so much, Ayana. You know, I can't even start to tell you how and this is the current legislation, so that folks know right now, currently, the governor's bill, and I hope that folks are listening to this, and legislators' bills, none of them have child in need of services. Right now, it says if you're 18 or younger, it is a juvenile delinquency crime, and on top of that, automatic revocation of your license for a non-driving related offense. Who does that come on? What communities get impacted most? And so, you know, with that, I just want to emphasize that. And, you know, folks tell me, okay, Ashna, but, you know, what about the facts? And these are the facts. You heard Ayana today, you heard Valerie talk about the facts, and the facts are, on top of that, when we're talking about youth and we're talking about a policing issue, this nation is seeing how police are just not being held accountable, and they are not treating everyone equally. And that's the reality of the world that we live in. So the consequences of these laws and who face them, it is so very important to ensure that when we're talking about youth, we have folks like Ayana there and Valerie there to really speak to the truth of what is actually going to be the impact of the laws that are being written. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea, who's going to introduce our wonderful panel, you know, nationally and locally, to talk more in depth about these issues.
Thanks, Ashna, and thank you so much to our Rise for Youth representative for coming back on and always speaking truth and showing up to let these legislators know that they have a voice and they're going to be heard. So make sure that you are following Rise for Youth on all of their endeavors and all of their legislative priorities this session. Let's go ahead and get started on the panel. I'm so excited to introduce our 4 panelists. To get started, I'm introducing Cassandra Frederique. She's the Executive Director of Drug Policy Alliance, a national nonprofit that works to end the war on drugs, which has disproportionately harmed Black, Latinx, Indigenous, immigrant, and LGBTQ communities, and build alternatives grounded in science, compassion, health, and human rights. Thank you so much for being here. I'd also like to introduce Mike Thomas out of Richmond. Mike is a cultivator and founder of Grow Your Own, a company that teaches cannabis education and cultivation techniques. He's passionate about the business development and inclusion for young African Americans within the growing cannabis industry. And with over a decade of knowledge and experience, his ultimate goal is to teach as many marginalized communities as possible how to grow for themselves. And finally, Dr. Brenda Waller. Dr. Brenda Waller is a minority farm owner, hemp farmer, and medical doctor who treats individuals with chronic conditions. Dr. Waller is passionate about the need for equity in all those areas of public service, and she sits on the board of the 2020 Farmers Cooperative and owner of a hemp business, Strange Fruit Farms Extract. I'll give a wave, Dr. Waller, thanks so much. And finally, for real, I'd like to introduce to you all Berner, the founder and CEO of Cookies, who's also here to share their knowledge and experience within the industry. So let's go ahead. Yep, wave right there. You see Berner. Let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to ask all of the panelists to do is start off with about 5 minutes. I'm going to give each panelist 5 minutes to talk about how you all entered this space and what is your experience in navigating how the systems have regulated marijuana and what you're looking to see as marijuana is legalized across the country and right here in our Commonwealth. I'm going to just start and open it up. The first question to Cassandra.
Thanks, Chelsea, and thank you all so much for inviting DPA to be a part of this conversation. So my name is Cassandra Frederique. I'm the new Executive Director at Drug Policy Alliance. DPA is a national organization working to end the war on drugs, and for us, that's more than cannabis. So we work on ending all the criminal penalties associated with drug use and are really building out what our policy agenda is for people who sell drugs. And I say that because we think the biggest issue when it comes to drugs is prohibition. And prohibition has set up a situation where we've created the excuse to interfere in people's lives and take away people's rights. And so I'm born and bred from New York. My parents are Haitian immigrants, so I'm first generation. And the way that I came into the cannabis space is through working on policing. And so I've spent the last decade working on policing reform in New York, and doing a lot of work around stop and frisk. And we built a New York in the house. Sorry, I always look at the chat. So money making Manhattan. So we have really focused on policing and the way that cannabis was used as a way to push policing. And so this has been really important to us because, you know, when we're having conversations about walking while Black, we recognize the way that they've used cannabis as an excuse for how they infringe upon people's rights. And so when we built the campaign in New York, we realized that the issue around cannabis was about cannabis and not about cannabis at the same time, right? And so that's how we were able to build up the infrastructure and the community power to push back on NYPD, especially in the city, because, you know, when we first started having conversations, a lot of the old heads were like, well, if they didn't have marijuana in their pocket, they wouldn't get in trouble. And we were like, cool, but they not running up on these white boys who are sitting out here in front of their prep schools who are, you know, smoking in the street, like just nothing's happening. And, you know, for us, it was like 85% of the arrests were Black and Latino, 70% between the ages of 16 and 29, 52% between the ages of 16 and 21. So it was really a way to like lock up our young people. And the report showed that a lot of these young people had no prior history with the criminal legal system until they were arrested for cannabis. And so that, you know, if everyone has a conversation around cannabis being a gateway, what we often said was that cannabis was a gateway until criminalization, that it was the way that we introduced people and got people in the system. And as someone who's like a social worker, you know, looking at the broader effect is like a lot of people think about the arrest, but they miss the fact that Black and Latino women are getting their kids stolen from them in hospitals because when they're giving birth, they're drug testing them without their consent. People are missing the fact that people are getting kicked out of public housing for weed arrests. People are missing the fact that, you know, I said I'm an immigrant. That is the number 4 reason why people are getting deported in this country. So for us, when we started talking about cannabis and I got a cannabis advocacy, I just realized that, you know, it's about the plant and all the amazing health impacts that it can have on your life, but it's also about how it was being used as a tool to extract from our community. And so you will hear a lot of folks say like, oh, people aren't in, you know, you'll hear opponents say like, people aren't in prison for weed. That's a lie, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, sure, we can look and see that, but people aren't looking at all the amount of people that are getting violated on parole or probation because of weed testing. People aren't seeing how people aren't getting access to jobs at Walmart because you got to pee in a cup to get a job. And so that is the way that I came into the cannabis space, is really by like doing the work around broader social justice and recognizing cannabis as a vehicle to have conversations. And why cannabis versus all drugs at all times? Cannabis is the drug that most people use. And so when you're having conversations with folks, people are using alcohol or they're using cannabis or sugar. And they're having those conversations. And when we were able to have the conversation around cannabis, people were realizing just how messed up it was. Like then the old heads have moved from like, they shouldn't have had cannabis in the first place. And now our old heads are like, these white boys are making a lot of money and we got to make sure that we can get into the same space. And so that's really how I come into this space, is really through the advocacy space.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Brenda Waller, I'd like you to go next. Take a couple minutes to just introduce yourself and let us know how you came into this space.
Good evening to everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this discussion. I am a practicing medical physician in South Central Virginia. And I guess I don't consider myself, I am a healer. So I deal with people who are suffering on the mental aspect as well as the physical aspect and also social aspects, because most of my patients are economically struggling in some aspect or another. I'm very passionate about my patients because often, even though they're not criminalized, they are stigmatized by the fact that they have a chronic condition that our medical professionals cannot cure for them. A lot of the injuries that they've occurred have either been through work, or some of them have actually been what we call iatrogenic. It's been called by the medical profession itself, with surgeries and treatments and things like that that have gone awry. So they're left in this space where they're isolated from the medical community, they're isolated from their family, they're isolated from their vocation, they're isolated from their avocational spaces. So they're feeling this detachment from society in general. So my introduction into the cannabis world was actually through applications for the medical marijuana program that they have here in Virginia. Assembled some very intelligent and passionate people about this project a couple of years ago, and we did put in the RFP to become one of the companies for the medical marijuana. I don't know that we were the only minority group that applied, but I had some strong information that informed us that we might have been. And we did not get the application approved. We were not even allowed to see how we scored on the application. We didn't even get a thank you, try again letter. So from that aspect, I said, well, okay. And when the announcements came out at who had received the licenses to grow, it was obvious to me that it was not intended to be a fair and equitable process. So now I'm on the side of being one of the practitioners that are writing the certificates for the medical marijuana patients. And here we go again. This system, I think, is flawed in many ways. I think that as I'm trying to register patients into the system, it's very cumbersome, it's complicated, and they are getting bombarded, I imagine, with a lot of applications, and it's taking sometimes 2 and 3 days to get that process completed. So from that aspect, I know that big money, big pharma is involved. And that's actually how the marijuana became prohibited, in the early 19th century anyway, because it was very popular. It was being used as the main medicine for a lot of patients to treat a lot of ailments, GI symptoms, anxiety, sleep. You can go down the list, and pretty much any body system that you have has propensity to have some receptors for the THC or the CBD or cannabidiols, because we, naturally produce these hormones, or however you want to produce them, or however you want to classify them. Our bodies are able to absorb this medicine naturally. And that's why it's a natural plant, and it's a natural healing element for a lot of people. And with the CBD on board, patients have been able to try and do their experiment on their self-medicating themselves with the CBD becoming popular. And they're finding a lot of benefit for it. And they come to me with the questions, and I try to do my best to do the research to tell them if this product that they're buying is a legitimate product, what you're looking for when you're looking on the shelf. You go into a CBD store and there really isn't any guidance as to which product you should be looking for. They'll bring me something and I'll try to do the research for them to let them know this is a good product for them to try. So I think from my standpoint, being able to make this medicine available to the wider population without the policing of the medicine, I guess is the best way to say it. Because as a practitioner, as I said initially, I do treat patients with chronic conditions, and my only options at this point are to write those prescription medications. I cannot tell you how much pain it has caused me with the authorities in my state, continuing to maintain my advocacy for these chronic disease patients that don't have other outlets. Oh, well, can't you send them to counseling? Counseling says there's nothing they can do. Oh, can't you send them to physical therapy? Physical therapy hurts and they can't participate if they're hurting. So there are minimal options for them. And the controlled substances have their faults, no doubt about it. But the stigmatism behind the controlled substances has become so astronomical that patients they're being victimized because they do have to use these medications, and doctors themselves are being victimized because they're trying to help a population that does not have another outlet. So the legalization of this done correctly is a must in our state. And I think the legislatures that are trying to do this need to have voices from all avenues of our community to help them decide what is equitable and fair for all of us, whether you're on a professional level, as I am as a physician trying to recommend a medication to a patient, or if you're on the user side, and you want to use it. As I say, the medical marijuana program is there, but if you go to the CBD store, you might get something better than what you're gonna get from some of these dispensaries that are out here right now. It's mainly CBD. It's not a lot of THC in it. And don't knock me, I think CBD is a wonderful drug, and in combination with the THC, it definitely increases the effectiveness. So I think our medical marijuana program needs a step up. It needs to be more inclusive. The dispensaries need to be available. We have 3 right now in the state. So I'm in South Central. My patients will have to drive either 3.5 hours or 2.5 hours to get to a dispensary after they schedule an appointment. So right now, I think the system needs an overhaul, even though it just got started with the medical marijuana program. We're already in a point where I think it needs to be overhauled.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Brenda Waller. Making the case for right now, what there is accessible is just not accessible to all. And again, amplifying the need for this from an everyday pain aspect and just the accessibility weaved in with how we're criminalized with it, and your experience as a hemp grower as well. Thank you so much for all of that. Berna, I'm gonna kick it right on over to you. Tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, and how you got in the space.
Thank you. My name is Berner. I'm CEO and founder of a brand called Cookies. It's a national brand, actually a global brand. I think like a lot of people in this conversation and in the chat and viewing this right now, I fell in love with bud as part of growing up. It came to me as growing up as a kid, right? And so that's why I was so shocked to hear that there's a new law punishing kids. It's a part of growing up. You experiment, you live, you learn, you tried things. And so I fell in love with bud at an early age and started working at a dispensary when I was 18 and was able to see the cannabis side of things and became an activist because I saw what the owner of my dispensary was going through. with feds following her and freezing our bank accounts, CHP coming into our store, taking all our money without taking product, with no warrant, putting us in handcuffs, and started to realize, like, man, we're actually really fighting for something. Um, when I started working at the dispensary, I really learned how important marijuana was as a medicine. I worked with AIDS patients. I worked with off-duty teachers. I mean, you name it, all different kind of people use medical marijuana, and I realized how much it really united us as people. And I started getting more and more into, like, okay, this is actually a really important thing, and I want to be in this for the rest of my life. So I decided to dedicate my life. When cannabis legalization happened, I saw a drastic change. I saw from what was a business full of activists and fighters turn into a bunch of, no disrespect, but banking style people, real estate tycoons, a bunch of people that weren't on the front lines with us started coming into the game. And I started noticing how things change very quickly. And I think what my goal is in the business is to do a few things. One, to keep quality cannabis on the shelf, to keep people from the game in the game, and to give the Black and brown entrepreneurs the opportunity to stay in business. In California, you've seen something rolled out called the Social Equity Program, as well as a lot of other states that went legal. And I've noticed that it's almost it's almost an easy way out just to award an equity license. As we appreciate that they're doing that, there's no infrastructure for them to take that license to start a business. If you've been if you come from a neighborhood affected by the drug war, if you're you came out of prison for doing time for a drug, or if you come from something that is struggling, how can they expect you to open up a business that takes millions of dollars, right? And so when you ask what do I want to see with legalization, being in California and being one of the only brands that's genuinely helping minorities stay in the business, I would love to see some of the high taxes that are coming off right now be dedicated to social equity applicants. I feel like if you're awarded a license, there should be some kind of budget for you to start your business. Not everyone's going to take the same approach Cookies is taking. If you look at our portfolio of brands, every brand partner we have is a minority or from the social equity program. Cookies is minority owned as well. And so I want to see people given a fair chance to build. I want to keep the players from the game in the game, and I want to keep the intentions pure. Of course, there's a lot of money in cannabis, but if you look at this room right now, all of us are from different walks of lives, different age ranges, different occupations, but we're all unified by this plant. And so, we talked offline before. I'm scared to come to Virginia. My tour bus does not go through that route. We don't go to Carolina. We know that the policing out there is harsh for something that is so beautiful, right? And that could bring a lot of us together, and is targeting, a certain demographic, which is unfortunate. Like, Black and brown are the most affected by cannabis when it comes to policing, right? And so I want to keep the game, the intentions of the game pure, and make sure that we have an opportunity to stay in the business. I don't like what I saw when the transition came from medical to legalization. A bunch of tycoons came in the game, and they're trying to push people like myself out. And so when I thought I dedicated my life to medical cannabis, when I was working at the dispensary, when legalization came, I doubled down on that. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna keep the product quality. I'm gonna make sure we keep Black and brown empowered. And if given a chance, like you gave me today, to speak my mind and say what should happen in states that are gonna legalize and tax 30% on something that is, helping people. Well, if you're going to tax 30% a state, you should be giving 15% to the people you're awarding licenses to that have been done wrong for years. So that's my mission statement. Just keep the real in the game and keep Black and brown empowered.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Berner. And last but not least, Mike, why don't you take just a couple minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got in the space.
Well, I'm Mike. I'm from Richmond, Chesterfield area, and I kind of course, like Bernie said, as a child, ran across and came into the cannabis, or I say weed space, but let's get proper cannabis space. But as a youngster growing up, just experimenting, and I kind of, I guess you could say, fell in love with it, and coming up in the late 80s, like I did, it was a lot of kids that were getting on prescriptions and Adderalls and different medications due to their like hyperactivity. And little did I know at the time, I was self-medicating. I found a medicine that was able to help me. I didn't know at the time, but as time went on, again, the passion with the plant just it just sparked a passion in me just to learn everything that I could about it. And that eventually led me to dropping seeds in the dirt and watching them sprout. And it was just a new love for me. And just playing around with something and just having fun turned into a real passion. And I started to kind of, I guess, dive deep and learn as much as I could about the plant, what it can do, and the different, everything about it, basically. And also being targeted for the plant and being incarcerated multiple times and having multiple charges due to possession. And like Bernard said, he doesn't even drive through our state. So imagine a person like me that lives here who has a passion for it, who likes to cultivate it. I'm continuously for the past 25 years of my life been risking my life for this plant. So with it being on the cuffs of being legal, I feel like someone like me, there's a lot of brothers out here like me who have been incarcerated and have done time, has lost things and, you know, time, money. And it's just like, you know, like, why let someone come in and benefit off of a business that hurt me? You know, I just feel like, you know, it's not a vengeful thing, but it's more of a motivating sort of mind frame that makes me want to say, you know, I have to go out here now and learn as much as I can and get myself in the door to do it the right way. As much as I've paid and laid my life on the line for this plant, now it's time for me to reap the benefits the right way. So, you know, hopefully one day to possibly put myself in a position like Bernard, but again, my passion is for growing and I love teaching. And I live by the motto, you know, you give a man the fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So my thing is, you know, hey, let's get out here and get our hands in some dirt and let's teach. And if they're going to make jobs available to Virginians when things are legal, how are they going to hire someone who's never touched the plant to work with the plant? So I feel like what I can do is come in and train some people and learn, then teach them the fundamentals of the plant. So that way, when things are legal, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, and they can go into a dispensary or, you know, a business and have the knowledge of the plant and be able to utilize it and capitalize off it. And that's just my spiel.
Thank you so much, Mike. I mean, I just want to take a second to sit with that thought, is that one, folks aren't coming to Virginia due to its racist policing. And two, folks are feeling this every day. And this is just, you know, fact. And so we've got a report that came out, and Virginia has some of the harshest racist policing when it comes to marijuana in the entire nation. In Hanover County, you are about to be 20 times more likely to be convicted of simple marijuana possession if you are Black. And so this is the reality that folks are coming in, and this is where Virginia is at. And so if we're gonna be the first state in the South to legalize, if we're gonna be, you know, knowing, you know, with JLARC and the millions and billions of dollars that we expect to come into Virginia, we wanna find ways to do it right, to do it racially just, and to reinvest into the communities who have faced the most harm. And so I know, Cassandra, you kind of set up the stage, you know, providing in your intro the kind of history of marijuana criminalization. You know, I want to add that, you know, people in Virginia, there were 29,000 convictions in 2019, of which majority were Black and brown individuals who were between the ages of 18 and 24. So we know that young people are not only, you know, they are being convicted at disproportionate rates. And right now, the proposal that came out yesterday said that people under 21 being caught would be people under 21, $250 civil penalty, and juveniles a $200 you know, fine. And we know that in the meantime, it's been said that it's going to continue to be illegal. It's not, people are still going to be convicted and subject to criminal and civil penalties. And so can you kind of explain how marijuana legalization in Virginia is an opportunity for racial justice, and please get as specific as possible about what other states did it wrong and what may be some of the things that you're hearing that Virginia is about to go forward with as well.
I think one of the first things that people should really sit with is that cannabis has been used to criminalize young people, period. It is one of the main ways that they've done it. So any legalization initiative that goes out of its way to criminalize young people is not actually dealing with marijuana criminalization, because it's the main way they go after young people, especially young people of color. So if the criminalization continues for young people, then it can't be a marijuana legalization bill. And we also already know what's important is that criminalization happens in multiple ways. And what we're finding is that people are like, sure, you won't get arrested, but we're going to give you this fine that people can't afford. And especially if you're thinking about young people, you give a young person a $250 fine, some of them may have it, a lot of them won't. So what is the penalty of not paying the $250 is further criminalization or arrest, right? And so it's like, you're just kicking the can down the street as opposed to actually dealing with the fact that we use this plant to criminalize young people, especially young people of color. And the thing is that drug policies started off as draconian immigration policies. Like drug laws have each drug that has been made illegal is based on the community of people that people don't like, that they've been able to associate with that community. So from opium being associated with Chinese people, the fact that most people in the US call it marijuana is because they wanted to associate cannabis with Southwest Mexicans. And so they wanted it to sound not white, right? And so that's why we say marijuana as opposed to cannabis, because they wanted to criminalize the people associated with it, right? And so I think this moment is, I think the thing to be really truthful about is that no one's actually done this well. That there are a lot of states saying like, we're going to do social equity, but, and I said this to Chelsea, I was on a panel with Chelsea yesterday when I said, we have to remember that we are regulating in a capitalist system that is actually not set up for any of our communities, that's actually based in extraction, actually based in criminalizing haves and have-nots. And so this moment is really important for us to actually think about what is it that we can actually get out of the system, get the most we can get out of it, but we're not ever going to get perfection based in the structure. Like the thing is already stacked against us. But what Berner said is exactly right. Is like, these folks will give you a key with no apartment and say that we housed you. Right? And so it's like this conversation where it's just like, this is such a setup. And so I think one of the things that's really important is how do we figure out how do we get capital for our folks, right? I think the thing is figuring out what your bright lines are. I think young people criminalization is a bright line, because if most of the people getting arrested for cannabis are young people, and then you legalize cannabis and then you still criminalize them, then they weren't your immediate people in the first place. It's moneyed interests that are pushing the bill, right? And so I really think it's important for us to figure out what our bright lines are. And to be really clear, DPA, listen, we do this work, but there are people that don't bang with us either. Like there are folks in California, we did their work in California, and we were like, yo, we got to get this done. And we're going to do implementation. And we didn't really do implementation. And the California stuff is really messed up, right? And like, there are people that are really, really struggling to navigate through. And to be honest, in the beginning years of cannabis regulation, the fight was legalize cannabis by any means necessary. And I think what people realize is that by going through that strategy, we really hampered ourselves from being able to get as much as possible. And so I really think it's important for us to look at youth criminalization. I really think it's important for us to look at capital being given to people getting licenses. I really think that people shouldn't move anything without those revenues being invested back into communities. It is Cuomo, our governor, has said this like 3 different times. I'm going to legalize. It has stopped every single time because we have organized the Black electeds to be like, if we don't get some version of reparations, we ain't doing it. And so I think that it's like that kind of level of like pushback that's like, these are the lines. The other thing is no new crimes. Can't be no new crimes. The other thing I would say is be careful about driving. They are using driving under the influence of cannabis as a way to do other stuff. And this is really important because a lot of, even the people that are with us get really shaky around driving under the influence. And our movement hasn't really figured out how to navigate that driving under the influence space. And so it's going to be really critical for folks to really call that question. Sorry for taking so long.
No, I was going to say, Cassandra, you're right on point. I want to point out, while we were going through the 400 page, one of the details that we noticed was that there's going to be a presumption of impaired driving if there is marijuana present in the car. And so let's just, even compare, you got an open container, they don't assume that you're drunk. So, it's up to the judge's decision on what they get prosecuted.
You know what that means? It means that it's going to be us, because they already disproportionately criminalize us for driving while not white. And so it's like, look at the different ways that they'll go through it. And so it's like youth criminalization, tax stuff. And Berner's point around taxes, right? That's another way that it kills the business, right? Because the taxes are so high. And then the taxes will be super high, and then they're not going to give us the tax money revenue, right? So it's like, where's this money going? And so I really think is credible. And I think Berner's point is exactly right. We shouldn't only get equity licenses. We should be getting all kind, like we can't let them catcall us into one area. Like it has to be throughout. If the South is going to do this, and the South needs to do it, to be really clear, because some of the most draconian drug laws that are happening are in the South. And like the coastal folks are moving. Y'all know these white people on the West Coast, they move it quick at the speed of lightning. They're like, cool, we got weed, we gonna do mushrooms, cool, we gonna do all drugs. Like they move it. And there is a world where the drug war ends for white people and it won't be ended for us. And that's what we gotta be paying attention to, because you see it in the arrests. The arrests have gone down in multiple places, but the racial disparity has gone up. Because it's not about weed, it's about policing. You see in a state like Washington State, where they legalize, and the arrest in hospitals for drug testing women of color has gone up. So it's really a whack-a-mole situation, and it's important for us to be really clear about how this is about bud, but it's our version. It's people's part in a broader movement for social justice. And I think that bud is political, and you just need to pick a side. I think a lot of people think like bud is bipartisan and it's going to bring everyone together. And if you look at bud that way, our community is going to be fucked, because it's okay. Because the people that ran up in the White House and the Capitol last week, they not neutral. Right. They not neutral, so we can't be.
Right. Thank you so much, Cassandra. And if you know me at all, you understand why I'm attracted to what's happening over at DPA. And I'm gonna, you brought up and was able to kick it a lot, and mentioned a lot too about Berner's point. Berner, I'm gonna come back to you and just ask, you touched on a couple of things, but would really love to just hear what you would specify, particularly for Virginians to hear, of what not to do, of what you've seen in California.
Well, I seen something on the bill. I didn't get really a chance to read everything, but I saw that they wanted to bring in the liquor board to control cannabis, right?
Yep,
well,
ABC is going to be controlling it.
Yeah, so I'll just give my opinion on that. The shelf life for cannabis and shelf life for liquor are two totally different things, right? You have to get someone that understands the process of when you harvest something, and when you cure it, and when you package it and you quarantine and you move it around. Like, if it's up to them, they don't know that bud's going to go stale. You don't want people in Virginia to finally in the South get legal cannabis and it be sand when they get it, right? So I would encourage that they work with somebody and that's knowledgeable about cannabis. I mean, liquor is totally different. It's a liquid compared to a flower. So I saw that being there. It's very important. We touched on social equity. She said it the best. It's like getting an apartment with no key. If you get a license, if we're going to be awarding people social equity licenses, we have to give the knowledge, not just the funding, but the knowledge on how to start and run their business, right? And so, in California, we're doing a thing called the Cookies Campus, where we're taking people from the inner city, mostly minority, majority minority, and we're bringing them onto our facility, and we're teaching them everything from A to Z, from cultivation to packaging to manufacturing to distribution, to everything you can imagine, right? And so the knowledge has to be there. It just super worries me when it becomes a big deal business wise in a place like the South, and they're not really reaching out to anyone. Like, look at you guys, for instance. You guys said, hey, Berner, he's been in the game for 19 years. He saw the medical side, he saw the rec side. He's actually been involved with the social equity. What could go wrong? Like, picture if the governors and the mayors thought like that, right? And they brought in people with actual knowledge that wants to make sure this goes right for everybody and make sure that the experience for people in Virginia is the best experience they can get, right? So I just think that we have to rely on using resources in our networking to make sure we're bringing in the right people to help advise certain situations. I think what we don't want to do is let a bunch of people that don't care about cannabis, that don't know anything about cannabis, get the licenses, and make sure that when we do give out social equity, that we're not just going to give a license that has no momentum. In the Bay Area, we're able to open up the first Black-owned dispensary and equity license in San Francisco. And I've seen LA struggle so hard. LA's been having the worst time with it. They just can't get it off the ground. And so I just don't want to see what happened in California happen in Virginia. We've been given good tools, and we're going to use the tools we've been given every time, because at least it's something, but we shouldn't have to just settle for anything. Like, there should be some good stuff that comes behind that. And as far as like the policing goes in Virginia, like it's just a trip. Like, it sucks that I won't ride my bus through there. I've done one show there, and it was popping. It was super cracking. Everyone was smoking, but I just seen the way that when they were leaving that show, people getting pulled over left and right leaving that show, right? And so when you mentioned about the cannabis being transported in the car, well, I go to dispensary, I go to my friend's house, I use a recreational drug. I leave my friend's house and I have it in my backpack or in my car, but then I can get pulled over and it's up to a judge to decide whether I have an open container. If I'm Mexican or if I'm Black, then you already know what that situation is probably going to be. So that's pretty crazy to me. I think that they should dive into that a little more. How are you going to go from point A to point Z with your recreational product and not be pulled over and said that you have an open bottle? So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but I think that the steps that you guys are taking right now by having these conversations and bringing the attention to legislation and everyone else is super, super crucial.
Great. Thank you so much, Berner. Some really good points. When we saw ABC, we were like, nah, this is not it either. This is just not it. It was one of the big points about that. Not to mention the top cop, public safety, homeland security, is also in charge of ABC. So that's like inviting law enforcement in it.
It's a very foreign world to them. They don't really know the best way to police it or to help guide it or write the. It's going to be a nightmare, to be honest with you.
Right. No. And we feel that. And like you said, they don't know how to police it. We don't want any policing in it. So it's like we got to remove all the cops out of that as well. I'm going to move over to Mike Thomas. You touched a little bit in your story, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more of your experience with the enforcement side of that as you've been really working with the plan over your years.
All right, yeah. If I could, real quick though, just touch on one thing. Speaking about the ABC, like running the whole thing, like, I mean, we all know because we here in Virginia, but Berner, like our ABC store that we get liquor is from a ABC store. They're the only people that can sell liquor. So it's like you can't go nowhere else to get liquor. You can only get it from the ABC store. So my question is that what they're gonna do with the weed? Is it gonna just be from a weed store, like a ABC store, that they're the only ones that can sell it? It's kind of weird. I don't know.
That sounds crazy, not to jump in, but I didn't know that liquor was sold like that in Virginia. And so if they're going to be the ones doing that and they want to propose the same style method for flower, they're taking away that unique experience that each operator could bring to the table. You know, it's an experience when you go to buy flower. You work with the plant. You know how much people are in tune with the smell and the taste and where did it come from and what kind of highs it get. Man, they ain't going to know none of that shit. They're not going to know none of it. They're not going to put the love behind it. That's crazy to hear. Hopefully that's not the case, Mike. For sure. Hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah. But to speak to the enforcement side, like I said, I wasn't really dealing with any sort of law enforcement at a young age, so I can't speak at the the child, I guess, the underage side of it. But after 18, I got multiple marijuana charges, the same old, for Black kids riding around in the car, pull you over, it smells like weed, they pull us out of the car, throw you, search the car, and they find like one blunt and they want to charge everyone in the car with one blunt because, nobody wants to say it's theirs and go through all that. And it's a car full of 4 people that go to court and are charged with possession of one blunt. And, so small weed charge like that, which was my initial, I guess, run-in with the law, like a small possession, less than a quarter ounce, which that didn't require any sort of jail time. It was like fines and your license suspended. Of course, that was the case in Virginia. Weed charge, license suspended automatically. Second charge was a little bit more over an ounce, but being that I had a previous marijuana conviction, that led to jail time. Just a little over an ounce, I was sentenced to like 90 days in jail. I'm gonna just say it like this. I was in Chesterfield County Court. I was sentenced by a judge in Chesterfield County to go to Riverside Regional Jail, which is a jail that's owned by the judge who sentenced me. He and other judges from Henrico and Colonial Heights all own Riverside and stock in the jail, which is crazy that he can even sentence me to a jail that he basically owns. So go to jail, lawyer comes to me with a deal. He says, hey, I can get you out into a drug program. You can, get out tomorrow and you'll go to a drug program and you won't have to spend any more time in jail as long as you complete this 6-month program. Okay, yeah, great. No one wants to be in jail. I didn't feel like I belonged to be there for basically medicating with a plant that grows out of the ground. So of course I go into the drug program, released from jail, of course, with a suspended license from having the possession charge. Then I go into a program where you're supposed to show up every day. You're required to have a breathalyzer and a urine analysis. You have to maintain employment in order to complete this program. So it's like, I had my license taken away from me. You want me to show up here every day. You want me to maintain employment all while not having a license that you took from me. And then I have to pay monthly to be in this program. So I try my best. I mean, like, hey, I'm in this program for a year. It's a 6-month program, but I'm nowhere near completing the program because it's so unachievable. So eventually I just go back to the judge and say, hey, give me my time, just send me back to jail. I'll do my time so I can just get on with my life, because it was just hindering my life for that whole year. So I go back to jail and I do my time. And I come home, and of course, it's hard to get jobs and get employment with the marijuana possession charges. And then I, of course, not gonna say of course, but then I end up getting a third marijuana possession charge, which was something small, but ended up again with more time in jail. And also I heard, I'm not sure how true it is, but I was told that in Virginia, there's something called a compound felony. If you have 3 charges that are basically the same or similar, that can be compounded into a felony. So I just, you know, it just, to me, it doesn't seem fair. And again, that's part of my reason why, you know, when they say legacy market, I am it. And, you know, I, you know, have felt the impact of the, you know, the marijuana laws and how they target minorities because of what we may choose to do. And what the more I've learned about the plant, it's truly a medicine, and I truly medicate. And like Bernard mentioned, being around it and dealing with it so long, I've come in contact with so many people who use it for so many different reasons. And some I never even thought could help, but they do, and you really need it. And, you know, just real quick to touch on what they spoke about in the beginning, talking about kids. Now, I'm not going to by any means condone, say, a kid going out here and smoking a blunt. But at the end of the day, if a doctor wants to put my child on some sort of Ritalin or some sort of drug that's going to cause a codependence, that's going to cause a chemical imbalance in my child's body, then that might be something I might want to second guess, because like the doctor said, we're born with cannabinoid receptors in our bodies. So it's obviously meant to be in our bodies. But, you know, and I feel like, you know, there's medicines out there that children utilize. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar, but there's a strain called Charlotte's Web that was specifically made for like a 4 or 5 year old girl who suffers from severe issues, and that strain was able to save that girl. And, you know, it's a true medicine. So as far as them trying to penalize kids under 18 for it, that's really not fair. And especially with it going to being legal, it's going to be more accessible. They're going to be able to get it anywhere. They're going to be able to send the old guy at the corner store and the dispensary for them, and it's going to be everywhere. So that's going to really lead to our youth being targeted and not making it to see 18 without a charge or without going to jail. And that's just not fair. We don't deserve it.
Mike, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, again, it just, you know, I can't even begin to say how frustrating it is to know the impact that these marijuana laws have had on folks like yourself, and then to see that the legislature is deciding to keep this substance illegal while it figures out a way to regulate it, and that the millions of dollars are not, there isn't an opportunity for that. You know, one of the things in the bill says that for the equity licenses, you can either be someone who was previously impacted, or you can hire 10 people who were previously impacted. And we know a lot of times what that ends up like, right? We know that it ends up with powerful and a lot of times white people with the money to put the name down and, you know, with the licenses, and they're going to be getting the social equity licenses. And so, you know, as someone who's seen similar programs like that from Detroit, it doesn't work. And so I want to emphasize, you know, thank you for sharing your story, and that we need to stop this policing now. We need to stop the harm now. And all current proposals do not do so. And so, you know, I just want to thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to shift it over quickly to Brenda about your experience as a grower and farmer. You know, how has Virginia participated in the hemp industry? How can Virginia focus on including farmers like yourself and be cooperative? You know, we don't want to just hear the lip service. We want to see what that implementation looks like. And I think, you know, you're going to be phenomenal at speaking to that part.
Well, my experience with growing has been short. I will say that. As far as the initiating factor was the 2018 Farm Bill that legalized hemp growing across the United States. And after, you know, 6 or 7 months of trying to put together RFP for the medical marijuana, and then at the end of 2018, our current president signs the bill that allows industrial hemp farming. I got my license. It was uncomplicated, and put some plants in the ground, like probably like 6 weeks later after I got my license. It's an intense process, I would say, because I did probably a little over an acre as my first go round, which was probably ambitious, but getting through the first season, I learned a lot. I had a great mentor that helped me problem solve when I thought my plants were looking stressed, and we got through the season pretty good, and I had a good crop. There was very little policing, I would say, for me. I never had an inspector or anyone call me or reach out to me or show up for a spot inspection on my farm. That did not happen for 2020 either. So I think some of it was related to just having the personnel to be able to police is not the word I want, but I guess it is police or monitor, you know, all of the hemp that was being grown, because people got excited about the, you know, the availability of producing this plant. My goal going forward, and there's all kinds of rumors out there that, you know, if you've been participating in the industrial hemp program, then that gives you perhaps an easier path to getting the marijuana license, grow license that's coming forward, but we don't know. We don't know that that's going to happen. So in the interim, I'm still planning to grow the industrial hemp and producing my own products, CBD-based products. And on a larger scale with the 2020 Farmers Co-op, hopefully decreasing the stigma of the plant itself, because I think a lot of people are still afraid to even grow the industrial hemp because it's confused with the marijuana a lot. Of course, with the industrial hemp, you have to produce something that has a very minimal amount of THC in it to be compliant. The USDA keeps going back and forth as to what that percentage of THC should be. Right now, it's 8.3% THC to be classified as industrial hemp. We're advocating for it to be at least 1% because a 0.3% gives you not a good product. Let's just say it that way. It's not a mature plant, so to speak. So it takes a lot more bulk in order to extract the oil that you're looking for. So with the Farmers Co-op, we want to encourage Black farmers, minority farmers to get familiar with the plant. The industrial hemp program, I think, is the easiest way to do that right now. Just get familiar with the plant, how it grows, what it likes to eat, how much water it likes to drink. And from that, you can easily transition that over, I'm thinking, to cannabis. Mike might be more, and Mike and Bernie will be more of an expert in that area than I am. But I'm definitely looking forward to opening up that industrial avenue for our minority farmers that right now, and most of you probably know the story about minority farmers. What, there are less than 50,000 of us left, when at one point, you know, we were, you know, in the millions. But the land has been confiscated, you know, through just bad management sometimes, but also predatory lending that allows lenders to recoup the land because the farmer had a bad crop and he can't make his note. So, okay, we're going to take your farm. So we want to encourage people to get back on their homeland. If they have homeland, start putting something in the ground and letting the, you know, the authorities know that, you know, we want to be a part of this magical plant that has so much health and wellness associated with it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Waller. I hate to cut you off. We are running a little bit low on time, and please make sure you all are following, and we're going to continue to share the information for the Farmers Cooperative and hear more of what they're trying to do. And particularly, Brenda, really quickly, just share where you're from in Virginia so people know where you are down there.
Okay, I'm in a small town called Nathalie, Virginia. Yay, we made national. It's South Central Halifax County. We border North Carolina. So, you know, North Carolina is way more progressive than Virginia right now in terms of the hemp industry, but we're down south. Look us up on our website if you want more information.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Brenda. And we're gonna do, you know, before we get to your questions, we're seeing tons of questions come in through Facebook, through the chats. But we wanna hear, you know, one last closing round from our panelists. Can you paint us a picture that if Virginia legalized it right, what would it feel like? What would it look like? And what do you think it would need, given the conversations that we've kind of had today and the initial components of the bill that you've heard today? Why don't we start with you, Berner? What does Virginia look like if we did it right to you?
If it's done right, it's not sold by one store. The way you guys have to buy liquor, I'm still shocked by that. I've never heard about that. So if it's done right, in my mind, you get independent operators that are able to provide a certain feel and vibe when you come to their stores. If it's done right, to me, the social equity applicants are able to get a budget, which has never been done in any other states, including mine, which would be a game changer for the South to kick it off like that, with legalization providing actual budget for a social equity applicant. And I think it would allow I think it would allow home grow, not 2 or 3 plants, but at least, you know, 12 plants for people to learn and participate and enjoy cannabis legalization. I think ultimately what it really boils down to is what worries me the most is I'm going back to the alcohol board running the stores. If that's the case, that's going to the vibe, the experience of buying cannabis is just gone. You want to let independent operators provide that good experience and knowledge on the cannabis that they're providing for the patients. And remember, even if it goes legal, it's still a medicine. So I like to say patients, it's very, very important to understand that even if it's legal, it's a medicine. It helps heal us for so many different things. So in my opinion, that's the way it'd be done right.
Thank you for that. And Cassandra, I'm going to kick it over to you next. If Virginia were going to do it right, what does that look like to you?
I think if Virginia does it right, there are no new crime, and that I think Bernard talked about the industry, so I'm going to say that there's community reinvestment from the tax revenues. And I would also say that if Virginia does it right, they wouldn't legalize cannabis at the expense of other drugs that should potentially be decriminalized or regulated.
All right, Mike, if Virginia does it right, what does that look like to you?
To me, that would just be not ran by the ABC. They create some sort of cannabis board, and like Berna mentioned, get someone or a couple of people that are familiar with the plant to be a part of it and understand what it takes to cultivate and package and sell it, and including the minorities as well as our I want to say our incarcerated population that, you know, once these charges are expunged, you know, I still don't think there should be a problem with you getting a job in a dispensary if you have a marijuana conviction, but, you know, just including the people who have been disenfranchised the most, and that equity bill, like he said, including some sort of budget or some sort of startup to help.
Thank you so much, Mike. And Brenda, if it was going to be legalized, right, what does that look like to you?
Wow. Freedom for all. What can I say? You know, if it's going to be legalized, of course, we have to have a system to make sure that, you know, people are getting quality product you know, we've got to have some quality control about it. But I do think the accessibility for home growers, for farmers, for whomever wants to, it just needs to be open and available. And I agree with Mike that, you know, the legislators, maybe they have good intentions, but you know what good intentions usually lead to. We have to get individuals involved from all aspects of the cannabis world to make this equitable. Look at somebody that's done it right. I mean, maybe if it hasn't been done correctly here in the United States, let's look outside of the United States. Let's look at Canada. Let's look at Europe. Let's look at other places that have made this a product that's not criminalized, but utilized as a medicine.
Thank you so much. You know, I very much appreciate all of y'all for participating in this panel. We're gonna kick it off to some of the questions that we're hearing in the audience. I'm gonna, you know, start off with one of the first questions that came in. Is there a current bill number that supports the repeal of prohibition, aka stopping the harm, stopping the policing, stop making it illegal in the meantime while we figure the market out? And the answer is no. None of the bills, Eben, Heretics, either on the House side or the Senate side, there is currently no bill that does this. You know, I will say Delegate Foy was a wonderful champion this past 2020 session and had a bill in, and, you know, and there isn't any bill that does that currently in the pathway towards legalization and regulation. And so it's unfortunate to hear that. You know, we had another question come in. I'm a first generation immigrant, Colombian American. States like Colorado and California have talked about creating programs to empower minorities to be able to participate in the industry, which ends up being mostly white and male dominated. What are the proposals actually offering / doing? I'm gonna kick that over to you, Bernard, quickly, but I do wanna say that currently it doesn't look too good in regards to the way that the bill says. Again, the devil's in the details, and so we're looking at that. But even something as simple as for the minority licenses, for you to be able to just hire 10 previously impacted folks and get access to that, you know, bucket of licenses, we know that doesn't work. And so Bernard, do you want to quickly maybe say some things in your experience of how we could do this right?
Yeah, I think by hiring 10 people, that's not official to me at all. That's the easy way out. That's the big boy saying, I got the money to get the property that's zoned because the big homies told me which property to grab that will be zoned. And all I have to do is hire 10 people affected by the drug war or issued a minority or equity license. I feel like at the end of the day, like, in California, I'm pretty sure that, you know, the equity license is for people affected by that come from neighborhoods affected by the drug war, or people that have done time for drugs in the past, right? And so, I just feel like that's a very easy way out, and it's going to be a very dangerous situation to be able to just hire 10 people given the equity license. I don't think that's fair. I think that the equity license should be given with the budget. Also with, you know, some kind of, if it's not going to be a budget, give them a building, like give them a city or state owned building, but with the 30% tax, there has to be a budget, because what is that tax going to? What is it really going to? If there's no language saying it's going to reinvest in neighborhoods affected by the drug war, if it's not going to people who have been awarded license, then what is it going to? There's not a 30% tax when you buy a cup of coffee. There's not a 30% tax when you buy a bottle of alcohol. So I feel like at the end of the day, I was very, very surprised to hear by hiring 10 people, given an equity license, you could open up a equity store. That's going to be the biggest cop out ever. You're going to see what they're going to try to turn that into, because I would, and I hate to say this, I mean, I didn't even have the resources to start my business up by myself. And I have a lot of resources. I've been doing it for 20 years, right? 19 years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how many people try to take that route and hire 10 people opposed to empower 10 people. So, you know, I've never heard that. That wasn't even done in California. That needs to be challenged. That law needs to be challenged for sure. And I recommend that anyone that's awarded equity license, don't fall for it. Don't be saying that's the only option we have. Let's just work for this place so they can open one. Nah, hold strong. Make sure you get yours. You were given that for a reason, and make sure you take full advantage of the license you get and hold strong, and don't just bow out and just let some powerhouse open up a store because he's going to hire 10 people awarded license.
Thanks so much. There is a question coming in that says social, and this one, Cassandra, I'm going to ask you if you can look at this one, and Berner, if you want to as well, and all the panelists, truly, but social equity is not defined in the bill. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you have to define it. I mean, right? How could you not define it? I mean, they could just make social equity be anything they want to be. I think that the one thing in California they did was define it, and it was very clear that if you're come from a neighborhood that's been affected by the drug war, or you've done time because of the drugs, they picked a handful of people who are able to participate. You could fill in an application and win. So the fact they haven't defined that, it's just kind of sus, to be 100% honest.
I think sus is the word. So I'm gonna go with that.
Perf, sus is the word. We're gonna keep going on that one. Ashna, you want to hit the next question?
Yeah, the next question is, how long in this next general session / how much time do we have to make our voices heard before they vote? I will say that, there was a world in which we heard today that this might have been heard 8 a.m. tomorrow. And, we just got the bill language yesterday, 400 pages. And when we're talking about it's not just the ACLU, it is not just marijuana justice. It's to say that the people involved in the process from the beginning, we've been asking that folks, Black and brown folks are leading this movement and are involved with, the legislation from the start. So, in Virginia, it's going to be the next 45 days is our opportunity to get our voice heard. At the end of this program, we're going to be closing it up with our action alert and what you can do next to support it. As we're going through the details and what we talked about today, there are going to be several points that we are going to be, needing momentum behind to truly challenge. We cannot let it get out of this legislative session. We know some version is going to get through. And so it's all about getting our voices heard. And also having legislators understand, I want to put it out there that this is going very quickly, 45 days to discuss this 400 pages. Some legislators aren't even on the same page about what it does. And so really taking this opportunity to talking to legislators and letting them know the components that are most important to you will be just as important. There's so many issues that are coming up, and this is a really important one, but it's very important that the conversation continues. And so I know right there is our action alert right there, and that will email your legislator with some of the critical components that we talked about. So please, look at the link and feel free to contact us, and we will let you know how you can really help push this through. Chelsea, do you want to take on the next question?
Sure. I think maybe we'll make this our last one before we head on out. And I'm going to do it in brevity and head it over to you, Cassandra, because you might be able to talk a little bit about this. But someone brought up micro licenses. Can you just briefly talk about what is a micro license?
I think it depends on what context. So some of the things that we've seen is like micro licenses for smaller businesses. So folks that are not trying to do big grows, but are trying to do like the artisanal kind of like gourmet kind of shit, like really small, like I'm going to do a really small grow. It's going to be a super small business. I want to commit to that. And oftentimes people do micro licenses if they know they want to do small businesses, or sometimes, one thing that hasn't been mentioned here, which could be good for folks in Virginia to think about, is cooperative licenses. So where a bunch of people get one license together and try to like switch up the kinds of economic models that we'll use. And I think that micro licenses can be super helpful in like lowering the barriers to people getting because of, how much money it costs to run that business. But I think it's super important because some other things I've seen is like people collect the micro licenses and then they do some like haberdashery kind of stuff, and like then move forward. So we're operating in a system of capitalism. So folks are going to be looking for the finesse throughout. And, you know, scamming is alive and well in cannabis as well. And so I don't think people should, you know, a lot of people on this call like hold cannabis in high regard and like it's connected to your like personhood. But in a regulatory model, there's a lot of scammers, there are a lot of people that are using the same business models that have kept us out of other markets for a very long time.
Cassandra, you mind if I speak on the micro license?
Sure.
So the micro license, if done right, is one of my favorite licenses in California. We have our flagship store, our first store, and what it provides is the opportunity to grow on site, to manufacture your hash, your pens, etc. on site, to package and distribute on site, and to sell on site, right? And so it's able to take a group, like let's say we gave Mike, if Mike were given a micro license, he could grow his product on the spot, he could make his hash and his pens, he could package it there, and he could sell it there. It allows a lot of the middlemen that get in and make things a little difficult to be kind of put out the way. So if a micro license is done right, it's probably one of my favorite licenses to keep that experience pure to the operator.
Thank you, Bernard, so much. And as you can see, a lot of folks on this panel could really talk about this for such a long time, so make sure you are following them. And we will try and keep them close to continue to answer questions as they come up. As Ashna mentioned, 45 days, it does not have long. And I'm actually gonna kick it over to Antonio Dow just to close us out for Marijuana Justice. He's one of our board members out in the 757. Over to you, Antonio.
Sorry, I've been fighting and muting and unmuting this mic the whole time we've been on this computer. First of all, I just want to say I love Virginia. I've had the opportunity to leave tons of times being in the entertainment business, tons of offers to leave in my young 29-year-old life. I refuse. I really want to see this place grow. I really think one of the main things that we talk about, Chelsea and I, with marijuana justice, is repair. It's one of the three things that stick out to me the most. We talked a lot up here about the justice side of it, but I just want to jump out there and say I think repair goes a lot hand in hand with reparations. I think a lot of times people hear the word reparations and they just hear money, right? When I hear reparations, I hear access. I think a lot of times, and even Black and brown people, like, hear reparations and hear money. Money is great, but the one thing that's kept us behind for forever is access, right? We don't have access to the best medical programs. We don't have access to the best foods. Most of our neighborhoods are in food deserts. I work with city politics along with working with entertainment, and it's this huge combination of things that affect us, and repair has a huge need for financial gain in order to repair correctly. And I compare the cannabis industry, I said it to Chelsea a couple of times, to what some people might compare to gold rush or alcohol prohibition. You only get a couple times to change drastically a culture's financial legacy, so to speak. And I think cannabis is, I'll just say it, I think it's the last thing that we have left for Black and brown people. I don't know if there'll be another $1 billion industry that comes through like this, where you can literally connect all the dots, make all the rules for it, give all the access you need to make the change. Not doing it is just saying, shit, we don't want to do it. So I don't want to be long-winded about it because I'm not like a big talker, but I will say, in fact, you know, the 757, to be specific, I live in Norfolk, Virginia. Down here in the 757, we are probably the biggest tourism area in the state of Virginia. With the beach, with the casinos on the verge of Norfolk and Portsmouth, the state of Virginia, the 757 specifically, is going to make billions of dollars off of this industry in the next couple of years. I'm going to continue to say it. Virginians should have their opportunity at that financial change to be owners and not consumers. Like, forcing Virginians into a consumer paddle it's just pacifying. So that's my spiel. I'll start getting upset about it. So I kind of want to end by saying on my end, thank you to ACLU. I would encourage everybody to follow THC Justice Now on Instagram. We have some canna hours coming up. I think the first one is this Saturday, right, Chelsea? We have somebody from 420 Blackbird. They're going to be speaking from Oakland, California. Just stay in the loop. Some of this information is public, like the J-Lark study. It was mentioned a lot. It's in my mind probably outdated by now, but it's some of the only public information that they're giving people to kind of figure out what's going on. And I would just encourage everyone to continue to do that, continue to educate yourself independently, along with trying to continue to have conversations with people who are in the fight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonio. I want to, thank our phenomenal panelists today, Berner, Cassandra, Brenda, and Mike, Antonio, and Rise for Youth, Valerie, and Ayana. Like, without y'all speaking up, speaking truth to power, and really talking about how we need to be looking at marijuana and marijuana legalization, we need important voices like yours to be driving the conversation and be at the center of the conversation. I want to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge where we are in society, with the brewing outrage and the reprehension as extremists and agitators stormed the US Capitol last week. And we need to recognize the bigotry and the racism that has enabled this violence to be rooted in the very founding institutions of America. Which were built on the land stolen from Indigenous people and on the backs of Black and Brown people. And we need to ensure that as we move forward, especially when it comes to the war on drugs, especially as it comes to marijuana, we need to stop the racist policing. We need to stop the harm now. And we need to look at true reinvestment and true access to the industry. And so again, please, please, please talk to your legislators. Please, visit our website, and there's our talking points. It talks about our values that, as coalition members, we hold together. We want the prohibition to stop immediately. We don't want to criminalize another generation of youth. We don't want to create new crimes. We want to ensure that people are involved and that reinvestment is truly there. And so I cannot thank I thank each and every one of you for attending our panel tonight and learning about this issue. And I'm just, very excited to be in solidarity with the voices here today and the community on the ground to be working to push legislators and policy decision makers to do what's right. And with that, Chelsea, do you have a couple of words to close out with before we end the program tonight?
I just want to say thank you again to everyone. Make sure you're following everyone on the panel, and we are going to have to do this together. And to remember, even if we pass something this session, we will be continuing to fight now until forever to ensure that we're not still being criminalized and that we are included. So please look forward to talking with you all more, and have a great week and weekend, y'all.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks for so much. The same. Keep the fight. We'll get it.
Yeah, thank y'all. I really appreciate it. I'm very humbled to be a part of this. Y'all the best.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it as well. Remember to vote out all the bad politicians.
Good luck, Virginia. We're rooting for you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.